The blizzard had been screaming for 3 days. Thalia pressed her forehead against the frost-thick window, watching the white void devour the world beyond her cabin. Snow didn't fall here. It attacked. Horizontal and vicious, burying everything that dared stand against it. The spruce forest that surrounded her tiny sanctuary had vanished into the whiteout hours ago. Even the woodpile she'd stacked against the eastern wall was now just a suspicious lump beneath 2 feet of fresh powder. She should have been terrified. Most Omegas would be. Trapped alone on the mountain's shoulder, cut off from the valley settlements below, with food stores running low and firewood that wouldn't last another week if this storm didn't break. But Thalia had learned long ago that wolves had more to fear from their own kind than from any storm. She turned from the window, rubbing her arms against the chill that crept through the gaps in the log walls. The fire in the stone hearth had burned down to sullen coals, and she knelt to feed it another precious log, watching sparks spiral up the chimney like dying stars. Omega. The word still tasted like ash in her mouth, even after 5 years of exile. Not weak. Never weak. Just wrong, somehow. Born without the alpha's dominance or the beta's easy belonging. Ranked below them all in the pack hierarchy, marked by a scent that made other wolves' lips curl in instinctive disdain. So she'd left, or been driven out, depending on who told the story. Better to freeze alone than suffocate among those who looked through you like you were already a ghost. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, words spoken the night before she'd fled. You have gifts they fear, child. Power that doesn't fit their neat little hierarchy. They'll never understand what runs in our blood. Thalia pushed the memory away. Whatever gifts her grandmother claimed she had, they'd done nothing but mark her as other, dangerous, wrong. A sound cut through the storm's howl. Thalia's head snapped up, her heart suddenly hammering against her ribs. She'd imagined it. Had to have. Nothing could survive out there. Not in this. There it was again. A scratch. Deliberate. Scraping down the length of her door. Thalia rose slowly, every instinct screaming contradictions. Investigate. Hide. Run. Her hand found the iron poker beside the hearth, its weight cold and reassuring in her grip. The scratching came again, weaker this time. Then a sound that froze the blood in her veins. A whine, high and desperate, barely audible over the wind's fury. Wolf. Thalia's fingers tightened on the poker. Wolves didn't whine like that. Not wild ones. That was the sound of something dying, something that knew it and was begging anyway. She shouldn't open the door. Every survival instinct bred into her omega bones screamed at her to bar it, to hide, to wait out whatever waited on the other side. Wolves killed omegas. That was simply how the world worked. Alphas took what they wanted, betas enforced their will, and omegas died quietly when they got in the way. But that sound... Thalia crossed to the door in 4 strides, her hand on the iron bolt before she could second-guess herself. The metal was so cold it burned her palm. She took a breath, tasted wood smoke and her own fear, and threw it open. The wind hit her like a fist, stealing her breath and filling the cabin with needle-sharp snow. Thalia staggered back, squinting against the white fury, and saw them. 6 wolves lay collapsed across her threshold. Massive, even half buried in snow as they were. Too large to be natural, too still to be alive. Most were dark-furred, gray and black and charcoal. But one, she noticed, had a coat of pale silver that caught what little light escaped her doorway. But the one nearest lifted its head as the firelight spilled out, and Thalia saw its eyes. Gold, burning with desperate intelligence. Help. The word didn't reach her ears, but she felt it anyway. A pulse of meaning that bypassed language entirely and struck directly at something deep in her chest. Gods above, Thalia breathed. The wolf's head fell back into the snow. Its flanks, she could see now, were barely moving. All 6 of them were coated in ice, their fur frozen into crystalline spikes. How long had they been out there? How had they even made it to her door? And why? Thalia's grip tightened on the poker. This was a trap. Had to be. 6 wolves didn't just appear during a killing storm and collapse on an Omega's doorstep. This was how she died. Opening her door to predators who would tear her throat out the moment they had strength enough to stand. The golden-eyed wolf whined again, a sound of such raw desperation that it bypassed every logical thought in Thalia's mind and went straight to the part of her that had always been too soft, too foolish, too Omega to survive in a world of fangs and hierarchy. "Damn it," she whispered, and dropped the poker. She seized the nearest wolf by its scruff. Gods, it was heavy, and dragged. Her boots slipped on ice, her muscles screaming, but she hauled the massive creature over her threshold and onto the wooden floor. Its body left a trail of melting snow and ice crystals that caught the firelight like scattered diamonds. The moment the first wolf was inside, Thalia turned back for the next. And the next. Her lungs burned. Her fingers went numb. The wind fought her for each one, howling its fury at being denied its prey. By the time she dragged the 6th wolf inside, the silver-furred one, lighter than the others but still impossibly heavy, and threw her weight against the door to slam it shut, Thalia's entire body was shaking. She stood there, back pressed to the wood, staring at the 6 enormous wolves now sprawled across her cabin floor. What had she done? They were dying. Even in the firelight she could see that. Their breathing was too shallow, their bodies racked with shivers that came in waves. Ice still clung to their fur in thick sheets, and when she knelt beside the closest one, a wolf with fur so dark it seemed to drink the light, she could feel the deathly cold radiating from its body. Thalia's hands moved before her mind could catch up, driven by instinct older than thought. She grabbed every blanket she owned, her winter cloak, even the thick bearskin rug from beside her bed. She layered them over the wolves, then turned to build the fire higher, higher, until it roared like the storm outside and heat rolled through the cabin in waves. Not enough. She could feel it. Whatever had driven them to this state was beyond mere cold. "Please don't die," she whispered, surprising herself. "Please don't make me regret this." The golden-eyed wolf stirred beneath his blanket. His eyes found hers across the cabin, and for just a moment Thalia felt something pass between them. Recognition, gratitude, something deeper than either word could capture. Then those golden eyes flickered and began to glow. Thalia stumbled backward, her hip hitting the table hard enough to send pain lancing up her spine. Because it wasn't just that wolf. All 6 of them were glowing now, their eyes bleeding from gold to something fiercer, brighter, like molten metal poured into wolf-shaped molds. The cabin filled with light that had nothing to do with the fire. It pulsed in time with the wolves' labored breathing, growing stronger, and Thalia's skin began to tingle with a sensation she'd spent 5 years trying to forget. Power. Not hers. Theirs. Primal and vast and utterly wrong for what should have been simple mountain wolves. "What are you?" Thalia breathed. The golden-eyed wolf's lips curled back, but not in a snarl. He was trying to speak, she realized, trying to force human words through a wolf's throat. The sound that emerged was fractured, agonized. "Pack. Dying. Only you." Then the light exploded outward, and Thalia's world went white. Thalia woke to the sound of bones cracking, not the homey pop of joints settling, but the deep, wet snap of structures breaking and reforming. She jerked upright from where she'd apparently collapsed against the wall, her vision swimming with dark spots. The cabin spun around her, too hot now, the fire roaring like a living thing in the hearth. And the wolves. "Gods," Thalia whispered, pressing herself back against the wall as if she could somehow melt through it. They weren't wolves anymore. Or they were. But they were also men, caught in the horrible space between. Limbs elongating, spines curving, faces that were both muzzle and human jaw at once. The sound of their transformation filled the cabin, breaking, tearing, reforming. She should have been horrified. Any sane person would have been. But Thalia found herself frozen not in fear, but in recognition. Shifters. She'd heard stories, of course. Everyone had. The old bloodlines that could walk between human and wolf, who'd held dominion over the wild places long before towns and treaties carved up the world. But the stories also said they were extinct, hunted to near nothing by fearful humans or simply bred out of existence as their packs scattered and intermarried with weaker lines. The wolf with golden eyes was transforming last and slowest. His shift came in agonizing stages, and Thalia could see why. His human form was revealing injuries that his wolf shape had hidden. Deep lacerations across his ribs, bruises that bloomed purple-black across his torso, and something worse, silver burns that wrapped around his wrists like manacles. They'd been bound. Someone had chained them with silver and left them to die in the storm. The transformation completed with a final, terrible crack. 6 men now lay where wolves had been, all of them unconscious, all of them massive, even sprawled across her floor. Warriors, Thalia realized. You could see it in the scars that marked their bodies, in the way their hands, even in sleep, curled into positions that could become fists or claws at a moment's notice. And she was alone with them. An Omega who'd let 6 strange alphas, because of course they were alphas, she could smell it now. That electric dominance that made her Omega instincts cringe into her sanctuary. The golden-eyed man groaned, a sound that was more wolf than human still. His eyes cracked open, unfocused, and fixed on her with desperate intensity. "Help," he managed, in a voice like gravel and honey. "Please." Thalia's hands were shaking, but she pushed off the wall and knelt beside him anyway. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd thought. Maybe 30, with dark hair that fell across sharp features, and skin that would have been bronze if it wasn't gray with cold and pain. "What happened to you?" she asked. He struggled to focus on her face. When he spoke, each word seemed to cost him. "Ambush. Silver chains. 3 days ago." His breath hitched. "Poison. On the silver." Thalia's stomach dropped. Silver poisoning was fatal to shifters. Everyone knew that. It corrupted their magic, turned their own power against them. Within days, it would kill them. "You should have gone to your pack," Thalia said, even as her hands moved to examine the burns on his wrists. "Your alpha could have—" "I am the alpha." His golden eyes locked on hers with sudden, fierce clarity. "And my pack is here." Thalia froze, her fingers still pressed to his pulse point. She could feel his heartbeat, too fast and too weak, stuttering under her touch. An alpha. 6 alphas. And they'd come to her. "Why?" The word came out smaller than she'd intended. "Why here? I'm just—" She caught herself before saying Omega, but he must have known. Must have scented it on her from the moment he'd dragged himself to her door. "Your power," he said. "We sensed it. From the valley." His eyes were drifting closed again. Healer, but different. Not pack medicine. Something older. Ice flooded Thalia's veins. He couldn't know. No one knew. She'd hidden it for 5 years, buried it so deep that even she barely remembered what it felt like to. One of the other men convulsed, his body seizing hard enough that his head cracked against the floorboards. Foam flecked his lips, tinged pink with blood. "Rowan." The alpha tried to sit up, failing. "Please, please, you have to help him. The poison. It's killing him fastest. He won't last the hour." Thalia stared at the dying man, Rowan, auburn-haired and convulsing. At all 6 of them. At the silver burns that marked them and the slow death already spreading through their bodies. She couldn't. She'd sworn she wouldn't. Using her gift was what had gotten her exiled in the first place, what had marked her as dangerous, other, wrong. The pack healers worked with herbs and stitches and bone setting. What Thalia did was something else entirely, something that terrified even other wolves. Rowan convulsed again, harder. Blood trickled from his nose. "Damn it," Thalia whispered. She laid her palms over Rowan's heart and stopped thinking. The power had always been there, coiled beneath her ribs like a second heartbeat. She'd spent 5 years pretending it didn't exist, 5 years letting it sleep. Now she called it forth, and it came like a flood. Heat poured from her palms, but not the heat of fire. This was life itself, raw and vital, flowing from her into him. She could feel the poison in his blood, could sense it like oil on water. Wrong, foreign, burning. Her power wrapped around it, isolating it, and began to pull. Rowan's eyes snapped open, wolf gold and wild. He grabbed her wrists, his grip crushing, and for a heartbeat Thalia thought he would throw her off, would kill her for daring to touch an alpha uninvited. Instead, he gasped, "More!" The poison came out in black threads that steamed and dissolved the moment they hit the air. Rowan's breathing eased, his color returned. But Thalia could feel the cost, her own strength draining, flowing into him like water from a pierced skin. She'd forgotten how much it took, how much it always took. When she finally pulled away, Rowan was breathing easily, his eyes clear. The silver burns on his wrists were still there, but the poison's grip had loosened. And Thalia was swaying, her vision graying at the edges. "You saved him." The alpha's voice was full of wonder. "You actually?" He looked at her, really looked, and his expression shifted to alarm. "But I'm fine," Thalia lied, even as she had to brace herself on the floor to keep from toppling over. "You're dying," the alpha corrected, struggling to push himself up on one elbow. "That kind of healing, it costs. Gods, you gave him too much." "There are 5 more of you," Thalia said through numb lips. "And you said yourself, you won't last without help." The alpha stared at her like she'd just offered to cut out her own heart and serve it to him on a platter. "You can't," he said. "It will kill you." Thalia laughed, a thin, bitter sound. "I let 6 strange alphas into my home in the middle of a killing storm. I think we're past worrying about smart decisions." She reached for the next man, one with midnight dark hair and features that suggested aristocratic breeding even in his current state. His eyes were open now, silver, she noticed, striking against his pale skin, watching her with an intensity that should have been frightening. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. His voice was different from the alpha's, smoother, cultured, with an accent she couldn't place. "Thalia," she said, and touched her fingertips to his sternum before he could respond. The power flowed again, and again, and again. She learned their names as she healed them. Caspian, the silver-eyed one with the cultured voice. Soren, with his midnight hair and scholar's bearing. Lucian, the youngest with warm brown eyes and the pale silver fur she'd noticed in wolf form. And Darian, scarred and silent, who thanked her in a language she didn't recognize. By the time she'd pulled the poison from all 6 of them, Thalia's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold them steady. Her vision kept graying out and she was pretty sure she was about to be sick. But they were breathing. All of them. The deathly gray pallor had faded from their skin, replaced by the flush of returning life. The alpha was sitting up now, watching her with those impossible golden eyes. "You shouldn't have been able to do that," he said. "No healer has that kind of power. Not anymore." "I'm not a healer," Thalia managed. "I'm just an Omega," he finished, but there was no disdain in his voice, only wonder. An Omega who just saved 6 alphas' lives. Thalia tried to respond, but the world tilted sideways. Strong hands caught her before she hit the floor, the alpha's hands, fever-hot and impossibly gentle. "Sleep," he murmured against her hair. "We've got you. I promise. Sleep." Thalia wanted to argue, to tell him she didn't trust promises from alphas, that she'd learned better years ago. But the darkness was already pulling her down, and his arms were warm, and for the first time in 5 years, she didn't feel quite so alone. Thalia woke to voices speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Low and musical, with rolling consonants that sounded like water over stone. She kept her eyes closed, listening, trying to orient herself through the fog of exhaustion that still clung to her thoughts. Shouldn't have let her do it. That was the Alpha's voice. She recognized the gravelly timbre. But the words were foreign, the cadence strange. She nearly killed herself. She saved us. A different voice. Younger. Lucian, probably. You saw what that poison was doing. Another hour and Rowan would have been gone. And now she's barely breathing. The Alpha again, sharp with frustration. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. Since when do you avoid Omegas willingly offering their power? This voice was dry, sardonic. Caspian, she thought. Usually you're trying to figure out how to convince them. She's different. Obviously, she's alive. Silence fell, heavy and uncomfortable. Thalia risked cracking one eye open. She was on her bed. When had they moved her? Covered in what seemed like every blanket in the cabin. The fire had been built up to roaring again, and all 6 men were crowded into her tiny space, some sitting on the floor, others leaning against walls. All of them were watching the Alpha, who stood by the window, his silhouette dark against the white blur of continuing storm. "We need to tell her," Rowan said finally. "She deserves to know what she's bound herself to." "Bound?" Thalia's voice came out as a croak. "What are you talking about?" All 6 heads snapped toward her. The Alpha crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling beside her bed. Up close, in the firelight, he was devastatingly beautiful, all sharp angles and golden skin and those eyes that seemed to hold primeval storms. "You're awake," he said. "Thank the gods. We thought—" He cut himself off, jaw tightening. "How do you feel?" "Like I was trampled by a horse," Thalia admitted. "What did you mean, bound?" The Alpha's expression flickered with something that looked like guilt. "When you healed us," he said carefully, "you didn't just cure the poison, you connected yourself to us, to our pack." Thalia pushed herself up on her elbows, ignoring the way her muscles screamed in protest. "What?" "The kind of healing you did, life force to life force. It creates bonds," Caspian explained from the foot of her bed. "Especially between an Omega and Alphas. It's primal, predates language." "You're saying I'm pack-bonded to you?" Thalia's voice rose. "That's impossible. I'm not even in a pack. I can't—" "You can." The Alpha's hand found hers before she realized he'd moved. "You did. I can feel you, Thalia. Right here." He pressed her palm flat to his chest over his heart. "Can you feel it?" And God's help her, she could. A warmth that had nothing to do with fever, pulsing beneath her fingertips like a second heartbeat. Not hers. His. But connected to hers somehow, woven together like threads in a tapestry. "No," Thalia whispered. "No, I didn't. I wouldn't." "You saved us," Rowan said gently. "The bond was the cost. Or the gift, depending on how you look at it." "I don't want to pack." The words burst out of Thalia with more force than she'd intended. "I left pack life. I chose to be alone. You can't just claim me because We're not claiming you." The Alpha's voice was fierce. "This isn't about dominance or ownership. A true bond doesn't work that way. It's—" He struggled for words. "It's recognition. Your soul saw ours and decided we belong together. That's not something that can be forced." "You don't even know me," Thalia said, hating how her voice shook. "How can you talk about souls and belonging when you didn't even know my name until today?" "We know. You saved our lives when you could have left us to die," Lucian said. He had moved to sit at the edge of her bed, his expression earnest. "We know you nearly killed yourself healing strangers. That tells us everything we need to know." "It tells you I'm an idiot," Thalia shot back. It tells us you're exactly the kind of heart our pack needs, the alpha corrected. His hand was still on hers, warm and steady. Will you let me explain? Please? Thalia wanted to refuse, wanted to throw them all out into the storm and bar her door and pretend this had never happened. But she could feel it now that she knew to look for it. 6 threads of warmth anchored in her chest, connecting her to each of them, pulling gently, like the tide. Fine, she said. Explain. The alpha settled himself on the floor beside her bed, the others arranging themselves in a loose circle. It should have felt threatening, being surrounded by 6 massive alpha shifters in a tiny cabin. Instead, it felt right, like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. My name is Kale, the alpha said. These are my pack brothers, Rowan, Caspian, Soren, Lucian, and Darian. He indicated each man in turn. We're the last of the Moonborn bloodline. Thalia's breath caught. The Moonborn are extinct. Everyone knows that. Not extinct, Kale corrected grimly. Hunted. For the past 100 years, there's been a slow, quiet genocide, pack by pack, bloodline by bloodline, humans and wolves alike, both fearing what we represent. Power, Caspian said, his silver eyes gleaming. True shifters, who can walk between forms at will, who don't need the full moon to force transformation. We're stronger, faster, and we live longer than modern wolves. We make them nervous. 3 days ago, Kale continued, we were betrayed. Someone we trusted led us into an ambush. Silver chains soaked in poison that's designed specifically to kill our kind. They left us in the storm to die slowly. But you tracked them down first? Thalia guessed. We tried, Rowan said, his expression darkening. But the poison was faster. By the time we realized we wouldn't make it back to our territory, we were desperate. That's when we sensed you. My power, Thalia said quietly. Your light, Kale corrected. To our senses, you blazed like a beacon, life magic, pure and strong. We followed it here, hoping. I don't know what we were hoping, that you might be able to help, that you might not turn us away. His golden eyes found hers. We didn't expect you to save us, and we certainly didn't expect the bond. None of us did, Soren added. True pack bonds are incredibly rare. They require perfect compatibility, not just magical resonance, but emotional and spiritual alignment. The fact that it formed between you and all 6 of us. He shook his head. That shouldn't be possible. And yet, Lucian said with a slight smile, here we are. Thalia looked from face to face, trying to process everything they were telling her. A pack bond to 6 alpha shifters, forgotten bloodlines and hunters and magic she'd spent 5 years trying to bury. What does it mean? She asked finally. This bond, what does it do? It connects us, Kale said. We'll be able to sense each other's emotions, strong ones at least. Feel when the others are in danger, and... He hesitated. It means your pack now, Thalia. Not Omega. Not alone. Ours. The word sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with cold. And if I don't want to be? Kale's expression softened with something that looked like pain. Then we leave, he said simply. The moment the storm breaks. We'll go, and we'll take the bond with us. You'll feel it for the rest of your life. That pull, that connection. But you'll never have to see us again if that's what you choose. That would hurt you, Thalia realized, reading it in his face. Breaking the bond before it settles. It would hurt all of you. Yes, Kale admitted. But your freedom matters more. We won't trap you in something you never asked for. Thalia stared at him, this powerful alpha who was offering to walk away and take the pain if it meant respecting her choice. When had anyone ever done that? When had anyone ever asked what she wanted instead of simply taking? She swallowed hard. I need time. To think. Of course, Kyle said, rising smoothly to his feet. We'll give you space. A sharp crack from outside cut him off. Then another. The sound of ice-laden branches shattering under too much weight. But it wasn't branches. All 6 shifters' heads snapped toward the window in perfect synchronization, their bodies going rigid with sudden alertness. Darian, the one with scars that suggested he'd survived things that should have killed him, crossed to peer through the frost-thick glass. "We have a problem," he said quietly. "We were followed." Thalia's blood went cold. Followed? By who? Kale's expression had gone hard, his eyes bleeding from human gold to something fiercer. When he spoke, his voice held the growl of his wolf. "Hunters." The cabin exploded into motion. Kale barked orders in that liquid language, and his pack moved with military precision. Rowan doused the fire, plunging them into darkness broken only by the storm's eerie white glow. Caspian and Soren positioned themselves at the windows, their bodies already beginning to ripple with the promise of transformation. Lucian's hands began to glow with faint silver light. Claws extending, she realized, wickedly sharp and ready. And Darian crossed to Thalia's bed, his scarred face grim. "Can you walk?" Yes," Thalia said, even though her legs felt like water. She pushed herself upright, ignoring the wave of dizziness that nearly sent her sprawling. "How many?" Kale's voice was pure alpha now, stripped of all softness. "8, that I can see," Caspian reported. "Armed with silver-tipped crossbows, they're surrounding the cabin. 8 hunters, 6 wounded shifters and 1 exhausted Omega." The mathematics were not promising. "They must have tracked us by scent once the storm weakened," Rowan said quietly. He'd moved to stand beside Kale, twin daggers appearing in his hands from somewhere. "Probably following our blood trail." "We can take them," Lucian said, his earlier humor completely vanished. His claws gleamed in the dim light. "Not without casualties," Kale corrected. "Not with silver weapons. 1 good shot and—" A window shattered. Thalia screamed as a crossbow bolt buried itself in the wall 3 inches from Soren's head. He didn't even flinch, just turned to look at the broken window with academic interest. "I believe they're done with reconnaissance," he observed dryly. "Kale Moonborn," a voice called from outside, rough and accented. "We know you're in there. Come out peacefully and we'll make it quick." Kale's lip curled in a snarl that was more wolf than human. "Merciful of them. They want us to watch each other die," Darian said flatly. "That's what the silver poison was for. That's always what it's for." Thalia's stomach twisted. She looked around at these 6 men, these strangers who somehow didn't feel like strangers anymore, and felt something fierce and protective unfurl in her chest. The bond, she realized. She could feel their determination, their fear carefully hidden beneath warrior calm, and underneath it all, their absolute certainty that they would die before letting the hunters touch her. "There's a root cellar," Thalia said suddenly. "Under the cabin. It has a tunnel. Leads out into the forest about 50 yards north." All 6 heads turned to her. "It's how I get out during deep snows," she continued, speaking faster now. "You could escape, if I distract them." "No." Kale's voice cracked like a whip. "Absolutely not. They don't want me," Thalia argued. "They want you. If I go out there, tell them you already left, that I don't know where—" "They'll kill you the moment they realize you helped us," Rowan interrupted. "Humans who aid shifters don't get mercy trials, Thalia. They get pyres." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Because he was right. Thalia had lived on the edges of human settlements long enough to know their laws. Collaboration with shifters was treason. The punishment was burning. "Then we all go through the tunnel," she said. "Right now, before they breach the door." "And leave you?" Kyle moved closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming in the small space. "You're Pack now, Thalia. We don't abandon Pack." "I'm not Pack," Thalia shot back. even as the bond in her chest called her a liar. You said it yourself. I can choose to reject this. So consider it rejected. Now go, before. The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. 3 hunters poured through, crossbows raised. Thalia saw it happen in horrible slow motion, the lead hunter's finger tightening on the trigger, the bolt launching straight at her chest, and Kale moving faster than anything human had a right to move. He slammed into her, bearing her to the ground. The bolt meant for her heart buried itself in his shoulder instead. Kale roared, a sound that was pure wolf, pure pain, and the cabin erupted into chaos. Caspian and Soren shifted in heartbeats, massive wolves launching themselves at the hunters. Rowan's daggers found throats with surgical precision. Lucian moved like water, too fast to track, his claws leaving crimson trails. But more were coming. Thalia could hear them crashing through the forest, surrounding the cabin. And Kale. Gods. Kale was convulsing in her arms, the silver bolt still lodged in his shoulder. She could see black veins already spreading from the wound, poison racing through his system. No, Thalia breathed. She reached for her power, trying to call it forth, but nothing happened. She was too drained, too empty. No, no, no. The tunnel, Kale forced out through gritted teeth. His eyes had gone entirely gold, his wolf fighting for dominance. Thalia, please, take the others and— Not without you, she said fiercely. Darian appeared beside them, blood splattered across his face. We need to move. Now. There are more coming. Too many. Rowan was there too, hauling Kale upright despite his alpha's snarl of protest. Root cellar, where? Thalia pointed with shaking hands. Corner. The planks lift. An explosion of wood and force sent her flying. She hit the wall hard enough to see stars, and when her vision cleared, a hunter stood over her. Young, barely more than a boy, with terrified eyes and a silver dagger raised high. Shifter lover, he spat, and brought the blade down. It never landed. A silver-gray wolf, Lucian, tore the hunter's throat out before the blade fell an inch, but the distraction cost them. More hunters poured in, and Thalia watched in horror as Caspian took a bolt to the leg, as Soren's wolf form staggered under a net weighted with silver chains. They were losing. Go! Kale roared, and his voice held alpha command, the kind that couldn't be disobeyed. His pack moved instantly, dragging Soren, supporting Caspian, fighting toward the corner where Thalia's escape tunnel waited. Kale looked at her one last time, his golden eyes bright with pain and something that looked horribly like goodbye. Then he shifted, a transformation so fast it seemed impossible, and launched himself at the remaining hunters with a wolf's fury and an alpha's rage. Kale! Thalia screamed, but Rowan was already pulling her toward the root cellar, and she could hear the snarling, the screaming, the sound of claws meeting flesh. The last thing she saw before Darian shoved her into the tunnel was Kale, beautiful and terrible in his wolf form, surrounded by hunters but fighting like death itself. She felt him through the bond, his determination, his love, and his absolute certainty that he was buying them the time they needed to survive. Then darkness swallowed her, and the sounds of battle faded behind. The tunnel seemed to last forever, a claustrophobic nightmare of dirt walls and darkness. Thalia crawled until her hands bled, driven forward by Rowan's urgent presence behind her, and the terrible silence where Kale's heartbeat should have been in her mind. She couldn't feel him. The bond had gone dark. No, not dark. Distant. Fading like a candle at the end of a long hallway. Move, Rowan urged quietly. Almost there. Thalia emerged into the forest on her hands and knees, gasping. Snow immediately began to soak through her clothes, but the storm had finally broken. Moonlight filtered through the clouds, turning the world silver and strange. The others were already out. Soren, shifted back to human and trying to work the silver net off his burned skin. Caspian, human again, sitting with his back against a tree and a crossbow bolt still lodged in his thigh. Lucian and Darian, both blood-soaked and grim, but no Kale. "We have to go back," Thalia said immediately. He's buying us time," Darian interrupted, his voice carefully neutral. "That's what alphas do." "He's dying," Thalia corrected, her hand flying to her chest where the bond pulled and ached. "I can feel it. The poison will kill him in hours, not minutes," Caspian said, though his face was gray with pain. "We have time, but not if we waste it going back into that death trap." Thalia stared at them. These warriors who were talking about their alpha's death like it was a tactical problem to solve. "How can you be so calm?" "We're not calm," Rowan said quietly. "We're terrified. But panic won't save him." "Then what will?" The 5 shifters exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them, and then Soren, careful, scholarly Soren, sighed. "The truth," he said, "which we probably should have led with." "Soren," Lucian started. "She's Pack," Soren interrupted. "She deserves to know what she bonded herself to." He turned to Thalia, his silver eyes reflecting moonlight. "Kale isn't just an alpha, Thalia. He's the alpha, the last direct heir to the moonborn throne." Thalia's breath caught. "Throne?" "For 1,000 years our bloodline ruled all shifter kind," Rowan explained, "not through force, but through power. True moonborn alphas can do things other shifters can't. Command wolves that aren't pack, heal through bond connections, even share strength across distances." "That's why the hunters want him dead so badly," Caspian added, wincing as he tried to shift his injured leg. "Kill the king, the bloodline ends. Kill the bloodline, and shifters become just scattered packs. Easier to hunt, easier to control." "But he's not alone," Thalia protested. "You're all moonborn, you said—" "We're cousins," Darian corrected. "From branch bloodlines. Strong, but not royal. Kale is the last of the king's line, which means he's the only one who can do this." He held up his hand, and blue light suddenly danced across his fingers. Not fire, but pure energy that smelled like moonlight and wild places. "Royal magic," Soren said. "The power to give strength instead of just taking it, to heal his pack from a distance, to share his life force through the bond. It's what's kept us alive through dozens of battles. Kale can take our wounds into himself, distribute his strength among us." He paused. "It's also what's killing him now." Understanding crashed over Thalia like a wave. "The silver poison, he's trying to absorb it, to pull it out of Caspian and you through the bond." "He's trying," Rowan confirmed grimly. "But there's too much. What they used on us is concentrated enough to kill an ordinary shifter in hours, for Kale to absorb all of it, even with his power." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "So we save him," Thalia said. "The same way I saved you. I go back. You're already dead on your feet," Lucian interrupted gently. "What you did to heal us should have killed you. Doing it again, especially with royal poison." He shook his head. "You'd die before you could draw the first thread." "Then what do we do?" Thalia's voice cracked. "I'm not just going to leave him to—" A howl cut through the night, distant but clear, full of pain and rage and defiance. Kale. Thalia felt it through the bond, a sudden surge of his presence, bright and fierce and desperate. Not a call for help, a warning. "They're coming," Darian said, rising to his feet. "He's leading them away from us, giving us a chance to run." "No." Thalia's hands clenched into fists. "No, I won't. There's another option." Soren's voice was quiet, but it stopped everyone cold. "It's dangerous, possibly fatal, but it's the only way to save him and break the hunter's pursuit." "Tell me," Thalia demanded. "A bonding circle," Soren said. "If we can get to the old shrine, the Temple of First Moon, we can complete the pack bond properly. With ritual, with intention." That would give you access to our strength, and give us access to yours. We could pool our power, heal each other across the bond, and Kale would be able to draw from all of us instead of just himself? Rowan finished, understanding lighting his face. He could survive the poison. But the temple is 3 hours north, Caspian said, through hunter territory, and He gestured to his wounded leg, to Soren's silver burns. Not exactly in fighting condition. I don't care, Thalia said. The bond in her chest was pulling, aching, screaming at her to go to Kyle, to save him, to refuse to let him die alone. Tell me where this temple is. Tell me what I need to do. The 5 shifters looked at her, and Thalia saw the moment they truly accepted her. Not as an Omega, not as an outsider, but as Pack. It's going to hurt, Rowan warned. A true bonding circle. It's not like what happened by accident in the cabin. This is magic that tears you open and puts you back together. You'll feel everything we feel. Know everything we know. Will it save him? Thalia asked. If we get there in time, Soren said. Yes. Then what are we waiting for? They ran. Thalia had never known she could move like this, fast and sure-footed through snow that should have slowed her to a crawl. But the bond pulled her forward like a thread, and somehow her body found strength it shouldn't have had. Behind them, she could hear hunters crashing through the forest. Ahead, the bond led her north, toward forgotten stones and older magic. And somewhere in between, Kale was dying, leading their enemies away while his pack raced to save him. Hold on, Thalia thought desperately along the bond, not knowing if he could even hear her. Just hold on a little longer. Through the fading connection, she felt something. Surprise, maybe, or hope. And then his voice, weak but determined. Run faster. The temple of First Moon rose from the snow like a memory-made stone. Thalia had expected ruins, collapsed walls and broken pillars like every other forgotten place humans had scoured from the landscape. Instead, she found standing stones arranged in a perfect circle, each one carved with symbols that seemed to shift and flow in the moonlight. At the center stood an altar of black stone, its surface smooth and unmarked. It's protected, Soren explained, breathing hard from their run. Hidden from human eyes by old magic. They can't see it, can't remember it if they stumble across it. To them, it's just empty forest. Then we're safe? Thalia asked hopefully. From humans, yes. Caspian had shifted to his wolf form to keep weight off his injured leg, but he shifted back now to speak. From time? No. We need to do this now, before Kale's completely gone. Through the bond, Thalia could feel him, so distant now that he was barely more than a whisper. She'd felt his pain spike twice during their run, felt his determination waver, felt the moment he'd stopped running and turned to face the hunters pursuing him. I'm so sorry, she'd felt him think, the emotion bleeding through clear as words. I should have led them farther away. How do we start? Thalia asked, moving to the altar before anyone could tell her to slow down. Blood first, Rowan said, to claim the circle and call the moon's witness. He drew one of his daggers and without hesitation sliced his palm. Red blood welled, and he pressed his hand to the altar. One by one, the others did the same. Thalia watched their blood mix and spread across the black stone, forming patterns that definitely weren't random. When it was her turn, she took the dagger with steady hands and drew it across her palm. The pain was sharp and immediate, but she pressed her bleeding hand to the altar anyway. The moment her blood touched stone, the world shifted. Power surged up through her feet and out through her crown. The standing stones blazed with light, not cold moonlight but something warmer, older, more alive. The symbols carved into their surfaces began to glow and Thalia heard singing, voices that came from the stones themselves, in a language that predated words. She's accepted, Soren breathed. The temple recognizes her. That shouldn't be possible for a human Omega. She's not human, Darian interrupted, staring at Thalia with sudden understanding. Look at her. Thalia looked down and gasped. Her skin was glowing with the same light as the stones, and beneath it, she could see something. Threads of power running through her veins like golden rivers. Witch blood, Rowan said with wonder. Old blood. That's why you could heal us. Why the bond formed so easily. But I'm just, Thalia started. An Omega who can wield life magic strong enough to save 6 dying alphas? Caspian shook his head. No. You're descended from the old healers, the ones who walked between worlds. That's why your power called to us. The revelation should have shocked her. Instead, it felt like something clicking into place, like finally understanding a truth she'd always known but never had words for. Her grandmother's cryptic warnings, the fear in her old pack's eyes, the power that had always felt too vast for one small Omega. Does it change the ritual? She asked. It makes it possible, Soren said. A true pack bond requires balance. 6 alphas would overwhelm an ordinary Omega. But you, he smiled slightly, you might just be strong enough to survive us. Then let's do this, Thalia said. The 5 shifters moved to form a circle around the altar, and Thalia took her place at its center. The moment she stepped within the boundary, she felt the bond in her chest flare bright and hot. It's going to hurt, Rowan warned again. Don't fight it. Let it in. What do I... Thalia started, but Soren was already chanting in that liquid language, and the others joined in, their voices weaving together into something that resonated in her bones. The bond exploded. Thalia screamed as 5 separate connections suddenly blazed to life all at once. She could feel them, all of them, as if their hearts were beating in her chest. Rowan's steady determination, Caspian's sharp intelligence, Soren's quiet strength, Lucian's fierce loyalty, Darian's carefully hidden fear. And underneath it all, distant but growing stronger, Kale. His pain crashed over her in waves, his exhaustion, his desperate hope that she would survive even if he didn't. No, Thalia thought fiercely. I'm not losing you. Do you hear me, Kale Moonborn? I'm not letting you die. The bond surged brighter, and suddenly she was seeing through his eyes. He was in wolf form, surrounded by hunters, silver-tipped arrows protruding from his flanks. Every breath was agony. The poison was winning. Blood matted his fur. She could feel his legs trembling, threatening to give out. One hunter was circling behind him, crossbow raised for a killing shot. Thalia? His voice in her mind was barely a whisper. You're in the temple? We're coming for you, she sent back. Hold on. Please, just hold on. Can't. His anguish flooded through her, and she tasted blood in her mouth, though it was his, not hers. Poison's too deep. Even if you heal me, it will just come back. This particular formula, it's designed to regenerate. They made it specifically for me. Then we burn it out, Thalia said. All of it. Together. We'll kill you. Even dying, he was trying to protect her. Then we die together, she said simply. I'm not losing you, Kale. Not when I just found you. She felt his shock, followed by something that felt like love and terror mixed together. Thalia. Now, Kale. Before you get too weak to hold them off. She reached through the bond and grabbed hold of his life force. It was fading, guttering like a candle in the wind, flickering with each labored heartbeat. But she poured her own strength into him and felt the others do the same. 6 hearts beating as one, 6 sources of power flowing into their dying alpha like tributaries into a river. Kale's wolf form blazed with sudden light, bright enough that through his eyes she saw the hunters stumble backward, shielding their faces. She felt him surge to his feet, felt his shock as strength flooded back into failing limbs, as wounds that had been bleeding freely suddenly began to close. What are you? Saving you, Thalia said. Now run, north, to the temple. We'll hold you together until you get here. Through his eyes, she saw hunters stumbling backward in fear as the wounded wolf they'd thought defeated suddenly exploded into motion. Kyle ran, and with every step, Thalia poured more of herself into him. The others were doing the same. She could feel them straining, feel the cost as they gave everything they had to keep their alpha alive. Rowan's steady strength, Caspian's brilliant tactical mind directing Kale around ambushes, Soren's deep reserves of power, Lucian's fierce determination, Darian's iron will. He's coming, Soren gasped from somewhere far away. But the poison, I can feel it fighting back. It's attacking the bond itself. Then we attack it, Thalia said through gritted teeth. She reached deeper, calling the healing power that lived in her bones, and sent it burning down the bond toward Kyle. The poison recoiled like a living thing. She pursued it, and felt the other's power join hers, not healing magic, but pure force. Together, they chased it through Kale's system, burning it out thread by thread, vein by vein. But the cost was devastating. Thalia felt her legs give out, felt blood begin to trickle from her nose. Around her, she heard bodies hitting stone as the others collapsed one by one. Too much. They were giving too much. Almost there, Kale's thought came through, tinged with desperation. Hold on, just hold. Almost there, Rowan gasped, his voice barely audible. He's almost. Through the bond, Thalia felt Kale burst into the temple's clearing, felt his wolf paws hit stone, felt him shift mid-leap and tumble into the center of the circle as a human, his momentum carrying him forward until he crashed against the altar. And then she felt nothing at all. The bond went black, not fading, severed, cut clean through like a knife through silk, leaving only ragged emptiness where warmth had been. Thalia's eyes snapped open just in time to see Kale's body hit the altar and slide to the ground. He wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. His skin was already losing color, lips turning blue. No. The word tore from her throat. She dragged herself to his side on hands and knees, her own body screaming in protest. She found his wrist, searching desperately for a pulse. Nothing. Kale, she sobbed, pressing her ear to his chest. Silence. Kale, please. Please don't. The poison. Soren whispered from where he'd collapsed against a standing stone, horror thick in his voice. When we burned it out, it fought back. It took him with it. No. Thalia said again, her hands shaking as she tried to find any sign of life. No, he's not gone. He can't be. But Kale's skin was cold beneath her hands, growing colder by the second. His eyes, half open, showed only gold emptiness. No recognition, no light. And the bond in her chest was a gaping wound, screaming with absence, echoing with the ghost of what had been. She'd saved 5 alphas and killed the 6th. The only one who'd mattered. The only one who'd looked at an omega and seen someone worth dying for. Around her, she heard the others struggling to their feet, heard Rowan's broken voice. Kale. No. Gods. No. Thalia pressed her forehead to Kale's chest and wept, her tears falling onto skin that would never warm again. The temple had gone silent. Even the stones stopped singing. Thalia's tears fell onto Kale's cold skin, each drop a prayer that would never be answered. The winter air bit through her clothes, but she didn't care. Nothing mattered. She'd found her pack and lost it in the same breath. Found a man who'd seen her worth and died protecting it. There has to be a way, she said, her voice breaking. The bond, if we complete it properly. The bond is broken, Caspian said quietly, his face gray with grief. When the heart stops, the connection dies with it. No. Thalia pressed her bleeding palm to Kale's chest, right over his silent heart. She could feel his ribs beneath her hand, the stillness where breath should be. No, I don't accept that. Thalia, Rowan started, his voice thick with unshed tears. I gave you life. Her voice cracked, rising to something between a shout and a sob. I pulled poison from your veins when you should have died. I poured my power into him across miles of forest, held him together when he was falling apart. You're telling me I can do all that, but I can't restart one heart? It's not about power, Soren said gently, though his own eyes were wet. Once the soul leaves, his soul hasn't left. Thalia could feel it, a warmth beneath the cold, a spark buried so deep it was almost invisible, like an ember, in ash, waiting for someone to breathe life back into it. He's still here. He's still fighting. She closed her eyes and reached, not with her hands but with that deeper sense, the witch blood that she'd denied for so long, the power her grandmother had warned her about. And there, in the space between heartbeats, in the vast emptiness where the bond had been, she found him. Kale's consciousness was a guttering flame in an ocean of darkness, fading, surrendering, letting go. No, Thalia thought fiercely, wrapping her awareness around that dying light. You don't get to give up. Not after making me care, not after showing me what Pack really means. She felt him stir, felt his surprise ripple through the darkness. Thalia? His presence was so faint she had to strain to sense it. You need to let go. The poison won. The poison is gone. We burned it out. But you stopped fighting. Tired. His presence flickered like a candle in wind. So tired. And it hurts. I know. Thalia pressed deeper into the space where their bond had been, wrapping herself around that dying flame like a shield. I know it hurts. But I need you. Your pack needs you. We just got you back. Please, Kale. Come back. Can't. Such weariness in that single thought. Nothing left to come back with. Used everything to reach you. Then take mine. Before he could protest, before she could second-guess herself, Thalia opened herself completely. Not just her healing power, everything. Her life force, her witch blood, her very soul. She poured it into him like water into a dry well, like sunlight into darkness, holding nothing back, because what was the point of surviving if he didn't? The others felt it through the damaged bond and immediately joined her. 5 sources of power, 5 threads of life, all flowing into their fallen alpha like rivers converging into a vast empty sea. Together, Rowan said, his hand finding Thalia's shoulder, his power joining hers. We do this together. For our alpha, Caspian added, his brilliant mind lending structure to the raw power flowing through them. For our king, Soren said, his deep reserves surging forward. For our brother, Lucian whispered, fierce loyalty blazing bright. For our pack, Darian finished, his iron will refusing to accept defeat. The temple blazed with light. The standing stones sang so loud it shook snow from the trees, a wordless harmony that resonated in bone and blood. And at the center of it all, Kale's body began to glow, first faintly, then brighter, then so brilliant Thalia had to squint against it. His chest heaved, once, twice, and then his heart kicked back to life with a beat that Thalia felt in her bones, in her soul, in every cell of her body. Kale's eyes snapped open, pure molten gold, and fixed on her face. You brought me back, he whispered, his voice raw with wonder and disbelief. His hand found hers, fingers twining together as if to confirm she was real. We brought you back, Thalia corrected, looking around, at the others. All of us. Kale's hand found hers, pressing her palm flat to his chest where his heart now beat strong and steady. The bond, he said, his voice full of awe. I can feel it. Stronger than before. Complete. And it was. The connection blazed between all 7 of them now, fully formed and settling into place like a key in a lock. Thalia could feel each of them. Rowan's steadiness like bedrock, Caspian's brilliance like lightning, Soren's depth like still water, Lucian's fire, Darian's steel, and Kale, complicated, powerful, kind Kale, at the center of it all, the sun around which they all orbited. "Is this what pack feels like?" she asked, her voice hushed. "For everyone?" "No," Kale said, sitting up slowly, carefully, as if testing whether his body would obey. His gaze never left her face. "What we have, what you made, this is rarer than magic. This is what the old songs speak of. Perfect resonance. 7 souls that recognized each other across all the noise of the world." He reached up, his fingers gentle as they traced the line of her jaw, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You saved us twice now. Once from poison, once from despair, once from death itself. How can we ever—" "Don't!" Thalia covered his hand with hers, pressing it against her cheek. "Don't talk about debt or payment. If this is pack, if this is real, then we save each other. That's what it means." Kale's expression shifted to something fierce and tender at once. "You're right," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "So let me save you too." "I don't need—" Thalia started, but Kale was already rising, pulling her to her feet with surprising strength. "You need a home," he said, "a place where your power isn't feared, where being Omega means strength, not weakness, where you belong." His thumbs brushed away the tears still on her cheeks. "You need family who sees you, who values you, who would die for you the way you just died for me." "I belong here?" Thalia's voice was small, uncertain. "With you. If you'll have us." Kyle's hands framed her face with infinite tenderness. "The bond is complete, but you can still walk away. We'll survive it now. It won't kill us. If you want your freedom, if you want your solitary cabin and your quiet life." "I don't." The words burst from Thalia before she could second-guess them, before fear could silence her truth. "I don't want freedom if it means losing this. Losing you." She looked around at the 5 other faces watching with hope and acceptance. "Losing all of you." "Then claim us," Kale said softly. "The way we're claiming you. Make it real, Thalia. Make it permanent." He tilted his head, baring his throat in the ancient gesture of offering. Around them, the other 5 did the same, 6 strong alphas offering their most vulnerable points to an Omega they trusted with their lives. Thalia's breath caught. She understood what they were asking. The claiming bite. A mark that would seal the bond forever. That would make her undeniably, irrevocably pack. That would tell the world these 6 belonged to her as much as she belonged to them. She should have been terrified. Should have hesitated. But looking at Kale's exposed throat, feeling the bond pulling her forward, Thalia only felt right. Like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. She leaned in, breathing in his scent, pine and snow and something wild, something that called to the wilderness in her own blood. She felt his pulse beneath her lips, racing faster as she pressed closer. Felt the moment his breath hitched in anticipation. "Mine," she whispered against his skin. "Yours," Kale agreed, his voice shaking slightly. "Always." Thalia bit down. The bond exploded into completeness. She felt Kale's shock, his pleasure, his fierce joy as her mark settled into his skin like a brand, like a promise. But it wasn't one-sided. In the same moment, she felt his teeth sink into her shoulder, felt him claim her in return, with the gentleness of a lover and the possession of an alpha who'd finally found his mate. The double claiming sent power cascading through the bond, not painful, transcendent. She felt herself change in ways that had nothing to do with form and everything to do with identity. Omega, yes, but not lesser. Different. Necessary. The heart that would hold them all together. The light that would guide them home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Thalia saw her mark blazing silver on Kale's throat. And she knew without looking that his mark on her shoulder would be the same. A perfect match. A promise sealed. Around them, the pack was cheering, laughing and crying and howling at the moon. Lucian tackled Rowan in a joyful tussle that sent them both tumbling into a snowdrift. Soren was grinning wider than she'd thought possible, his usual scholarly composure completely abandoned. Even scarred Darien looked peaceful, content, like something long broken had finally been made whole. Caspian approached, silver eyes warm, and touched his forehead to hers in a gesture of respect. "Welcome home, heart of the pack." One by one, the others followed suit. Rowan, Soren, Lucian, Darien, each one offering their acceptance, their loyalty, their love. "Welcome home," Cale murmured again, pulling her close and pressing his forehead to hers. His arms wrapped around her like she was something precious, something worth protecting. "Welcome home, my heart." Home. The word settled into Thalia's chest like the final piece of a puzzle she hadn't known was incomplete. For 5 years she'd lived in exile, convinced she was meant to be alone. That solitude was safety, and connection was danger. But standing in this timeless temple, surrounded by her pack, marked and claimed and wanted, Thalia understood the truth. She'd never been meant to survive alone. She'd been waiting for the storm to bring her exactly this: 6 frozen wolves who would become her family, her future, her home. "So what happens now?" she asked, looking up at Cale's face. Cale's smile was warm enough to melt glaciers, bright enough to outshine the moon. "Now? We hunt down the ones who tried to kill us. We reclaim our territory. We rebuild our bloodline." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, then another to her lips, soft and sweet and full of promise. "And we teach the world that the Moonborn aren't extinct. We're just getting started." "With an Omega at the center," Caspian added, moving to stand beside them. "That's going to confuse a lot of people." "Good," Thalia said, surprising herself with how fierce she sounded. "I like confusing people. I spent 5 years being invisible. Let them see me now." Rowan laughed, the sound bright with hope and joy. "Oh, we're going to like having you around." "Though we should probably do something about the hunters first," Soren said practically, though his eyes were still warm. "They know about the temple now. They'll bring reinforcements." "Let them try," Cale said, and his voice held the growl of his wolf. "They wanted the Moonborn Alpha. Now they get the full pack. With a witch-blood Omega who can burn poison from our veins and pull us back from death itself." He looked at Thalia with such pride it made her chest tight. "I almost pity them." "Almost?" Lucian asked with a grin. "They tried to take my mate before I even knew I had one," Cale said, his arm tightening around Thalia. "They're going to learn exactly why that was a mistake." As the pack began to make plans, how to track the hunters, how to reclaim their scattered territories, how to rebuild what had been lost, Thalia let their voices wash over her. She looked around at the temple, the standing stones still glowing faintly, bearing witness to the bond they'd forged. She thought of her cabin, likely destroyed now, and felt only a faint pang of loss. That place had been shelter. These people, this pack, was home. "Thank you," she said quietly to Cale. "For what?" "For being stubborn enough to survive. For not giving up." She touched the mark on his throat, feeling the warmth of it beneath her fingers. "For seeing me." "Thank you," Cale said, catching her hand and bringing it to his lips. "For opening your door. For having a heart too big and brave for this world. For refusing to let me die." He smiled. "For everything." As the moon rose higher and the pack began to shift, preparing to leave the temple as wolves, Thalia felt the bond settle into a steady warmth in her chest. 7 heartbeats, synchronized and strong. 7 souls, perfectly aligned. She'd opened her door to 6 frozen wolves begging for shelter, expecting nothing but trouble. She'd never expected to find her destiny on the other side. Never imagined that those dying wolves would become her family, her strength, her reason for living. But here, marked and claimed beneath the winter moon, surrounded by the family she'd chosen and who had chosen her back, Thalia knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was finally, truly home. And anyone who tried to take that from her would learn exactly what an Omega with witch blood and 6 alpha mates was capable of. Thank you so much for listening to 6 Frozen Wolves. Beg the Omega to let them in. She never expected what followed. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more original shifter romances and fantasy tales. New stories drop every week. Until next time, may you find your pack under the winter moon.